Hi, friends. Today on the podcast, I have such a special guest for you, my dear friend, Brittany Hoopes. And Brittany is a hypnotherapist and manifestation coach who has helped multi-million dollar entrepreneurs, professional authors, TV and movie actors, and so many other people to overhaul their mindsets to manifest their next level, all through the power of hypnotherapy and coaching. Inside of today's episode, we go deep into the power of hypnotherapy for any of you who are curious about it or who do not know much about hypnotherapy or have misconceptions surrounding hypnotherapy. But when Brittany and I first connected, we really recognized that both of us just wanted more authentic conversations with people who truly and deeply understand the power of intentional manifestation and what it can do and create in your life. And so Brittany really decided that she wanted to start something called Manifestie Bestie conversations. And this is the first of the Manifestie Bestie conversations here on the No Bullshit Manifestation Show. But I will also be over on her podcast called Destination Manifestation with another Manifestie Bestie conversation if y'all are loving this series and want to get in on more of the action. But you may recognize Brittany when you see the marketing pictures of her because she was also on the cast of the hit TV show on CBS, Big Brother. And we talk all about that inside of today's podcast episode as well. But Brittany has just created so many incredible things in her life via the law of attraction. And it's been so cool for the two of us to get to know each other and bring this podcast together for you. So if you are wanting to connect with Brittany after today's podcast episode, definitely check out the show notes down below where you can find her links to go and connect with her and follow her over on her podcast as well, Destination Manifestation. But without further ado, let's get into today's interview with Miss Brittany Hoopes. What's up, and welcome to the No Bullshit Manifestation Show, the podcast that demystifies all of the nonsense that surrounds manifestation and gives you the tools that you need to create your happiest, healthiest, and wealthiest life. I'm your host, Kat Kozad, manifestation expert and life coach, and I am so happy that you're here. Let's fucking do this thing. Alrighty, friends. We have Brittany here on the podcast with me today, and I'm so excited for the two of us to just be able to chat. We are both in the line of manifestation. We're both in the line of making dreams a reality, helping people understand the possibility of the world. We thought it'd be fun just to hop on and just have a conversation between two people who teach manifestation so that y'all can get a feel of what it's like to really just be so absorbed in this work. So, Brittany, thank you for coming on to the show.
Oh, Kat, Manifestie Bestie combos. These are literally the best. I am so appreciative to be here.
Amazing. Yay, cool. So for everybody who's listening, would you just share with us like a bit about you? What got you into this line of work? Like why manifestation and what has kind of helped you do in your life so far?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like everybody who's into manifestation, like it's like a big event in your life. It's like you can think back, like, when did I first learn about manifestation or what first brought me into this world? And for me, it was being a freshman back in college. I was at NYU. And I think, honestly, to tell you the truth, I was a theater major at the time, right? I was an actress.
Cool.
And I was in New York. I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. I love Saturday Night Live. So I'd watch it all the time. And I'm sure I'm like dating myself, but back then there was this skit about Oprah. And I don't know if you recall, I think Maya Rudolph was in it, maybe Amy Poehler, and they were making fun of Oprah giving away the book The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. And so they're like, The Secret, like making fun of Oprah, like saying this. And it was a funny skit. I loved it, the comedian and theater person in me. But I was like, why are they making such a big deal about this book? I mean, that's an intriguing title, right? What is this? What is this? So I look it up and I'm like, oh, this kind of seems interesting. I've always been sort of a goal oriented person, had big dreams. That's what brought me to New York to begin with. And
Yep.
so I decided to pick up the book and something about it. And I don't know if you can relate to this, Kat, but it's like something about it when you first are introduced to manifestation. It's just like my brain was just firing. It was just like click, 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 click. It just made freaking sense. And
Yep.
so I was like, oh, I've never heard somebody like put together how the room works, like what we now know to be universal law, and it made so much sense to me. And so I was like, okay. And I mean, then I went down the rabbit hole. Then I started exploring Abraham Hicks and all the other teachers and Dr. Joe Dispenza and all the everything that I could get my hands on. And that was 16 years ago, and I haven't stopped since.
Mm, so cool. So cool. Something that came up for me as you were saying that, I was talking to my clients about this earlier today, is that like when you have people who are creating some sort of fuss about something, like this Saturday Night Live skit making fun
Yeah.
of Oprah talking about The Secret, it's like the more people who make a fuss about it in this way of like, the more that thing actually rocks. Like the more that thing shines. The Taylor Swift lyric, like people throw rocks at things that shine, is
Yeah.
so freaking true. And like you said, it's like finding manifestation and being like, whoa, there's something to this. This shines, this rocks, this is going to do something for me. And being able to like truly feel that inside of your body, I feel like, and you can tell me if this is something you experienced. The first time I was introduced to manifestation, I got it up here in my head, but I didn't understand it in my body. I didn't understand what it felt like to actually embody the practices of it. Because so my introduction to manifestation was You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero.
Love that book.
And
Yeah.
oh, I still love that book. I read it once a year, and I always call it like my Bible. Like that's my Bible. That was my introduction to
That's how
all of
I
it.
feel about Ask and It Is Given by Abraham Hicks. Like
Mm.
that's my go-to read once a year book. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
Totally.
you, but yeah,
No,
I
you're
get what you
so
mean by
good.
having like your book.
Totally. Yeah. It's like that's been my Bible. That was like my introduction to all of this. And the first time I read it, I was like, whoa, this is groundbreaking because it was
Yeah.
concepts that I had never heard before. Like I didn't understand anything about my subconscious mind or how I was creating my reality or any of those things. So it was groundbreaking for me mentally, but there's still such a mind body connection, the like lack of mind body connection with it. And I fell back into like old patterns of the past. And I was still in this place where I was such a victim to my life, like such a
Yeah.
victim to my life, and constantly creating such shit because of it. And it wasn't until I like hit my rock bottom moment that it was like, okay, it can no longer be up here in my head. It absolutely needs to be down here in my body. And I need to learn how to embody this thing. And literally on like the day of my rock bottom moment, which my listeners know all about, I was reintroduced to the concept of intentional manifestation.
Mhm.
And I hadn't really thought about it for years. I hadn't thought about manifestation. I hadn't thought about any of these practices. In that rock bottom moment, it was kind of like the universe is like, here's
Yeah.
your path forward. Here's what you need to do. And from that point moving forward, same. I went all in on learning all about it, implementing it into my life, learning how to embody it. And my life has changed so drastically since. Do you feel like that was the experience for you? That like it was a mental thing before it was an embodied thing?
Absolutely. To answer your question, absolutely. But I think, did I recognize that at the time? No, I
Yeah.
think looking back on it, I could be like, "Oh, cute. Brittany thought she was embodying things. How cute
Yeah.
is that?" Right? I real like, and looking back on it now, for me, it was a very similar, and I think you and I have, share this in common so much. It wasn't until my rock bottom moment too, where I finally realized, like, you cannot left brain this. You
Mhm.
cannot logical. You can understand it. You could read all the books. You can do all the things, but in order to live it, that is a very different skill set than just understanding it. And
Yeah.
that's how it was for me. I found myself deep, deep, deep in the throes of depression, trying nearly everything, just not knowing what to do, not getting out of bed for days at a time. You know, I don't know how deep we want to go, but contemplating taking my own life, just not being myself, right? Like so disconnected to that source part of me, the energy of all that is, just disconnected to my higher self, that part of me, and just living numb in this world. And it was literally, I remember, and I will never forget this moment. And most times it brings a tear to my eye when I even think about it, because it's like, I remember laying in bed for like the how many days in a row and just getting this, like, almost like this lightning bolt of a download or an inner knowing that just almost like shook me in bed. It was like, if you can get through this, life will be better than you would have ever imagined.
Yep.
And I don't know, there was no logical reason to have believed that. There was no logical reason to have thought that. Nothing was going through my mind. But it almost like shook me so much that I was like, whoa, oh, okay, I hear you. Like, I
Mm.
hear you, universe, whatever. Like, I don't know what this is, but I hear you. And I'm going to choose to believe it.
Yep.
And I kid you not, Kat, in that very next moment, the most random thought, although we know it isn't random now, but what felt like the most random thought popped into my mind, which was, Brittany, remember when that hypnotist came to your high school? Do
Whoa.
you remember that lock-in where the hypnotist came to senior night and like hypnotized a bunch of people? I know that was like entertainment, but what what about hypnosis? Might hypnosis be something that could help you here right now? Being depressed and not being able to get out of bed and almost losing your job and all these things, right? Could that help right now? And so I couldn't get out of bed, but I could Google something on my phone, and I grabbed my phone and I Googled hypnosis for depression.
Yeah.
And that led me to all these different resources. Fast forward, do hypnosis, completely lifts my depression, helps when nothing else will, completely, I mean, revolutionizes my life to the point where I'm like, how does this work? Like, I
Mm.
know about manifestation. I've been studying manifestation for a while. Now I got this hypnosis tool that like literally transformed my life. How do these two intersect? How do they work? And so I decided to become a hypnotherapist and get certified as a hypnotherapist just for fun. Of course, the universe does not ever lead you to things just randomly, or I mean, you can do things for just for fun, that's fine. But I end up finding out through my training and through my studies that actually this is my life calling. And that's when I decided, you know what? I'm going to go after this. I built my business from part-time to full-time within 6 months, and
Yep.
3 months after that, I was called on to reality TV. I went on CBS Big Brother, TV show, 40 episodes later, and, a 4th place finish, ended up doing great on the show, and, of course, it skyrocketed my business ever since. And, it's just so funny when you look back at it, right? When you look back at it, you're like, "Oh, there was a difference between logically knowing and just loving to soak up the information of these things versus living them, versus experiencing them, versus letting them experience you in a
Yep.
way." I mean, that's what it felt like. It wasn't me doing anything, it was actually me surrendering to it, me
Mm.
being open and available to it, and allowing myself to ride that wave, because that's how you let the big things in.
Yeah.
And that's why I always think I had so much pent up manifestation waiting there for me on the other side of depression. It was like knocking on my door so hard saying, Brittany, just let go and let me in. And when
Mhm.
I heeded that call and I said, okay, okay, I'm doing it. And I borrowed those thoughts from that hypnosis, session as my own, use them as training wheels. That's why I like to think a lot of times in hypnosis, like, okay, let me use these thoughts. I can't think them myself while I'm in this, low vibe, resistance filled state of depression. But let me use these thoughts by the hypnosis recording as training wheels, put them on for size until they become my automatic way of being, and just watch as my vibration rises and just ride that wave into
Mhm.
all the manifestations that just flood in when you do that.
Uh, so fucking cool. And I know we talked about both of our rock bottom moments before, but I didn't realize that you had that almost like lightning strike kind of feeling inside of you, because I had the same
Yes.
exact thing.
Did
And
you?
yeah, I was laying on the ground of my apartment. I was so hungover. I partied so hard the night before that I probably shouldn't be here. And I had that lightning bolt energy come through me. And literally, what happened was like, I immediately felt like I needed to get up off the floor, walk myself over to the mirror of my bathroom, look myself dead in the eyes. And I said, Kat, you have the power to change your life. So why the fuck haven't you yet? And like, that was not a conscious thought that I had had at any point. Like
Yeah.
that was 1000% like my higher self entering into my body and helping create that shift and change inside of me. And as you were speaking and sharing your experience and what happened for you and how it came through this state of surrendering instead of this state of like, okay, what else do I need to do? I just like very clearly heard inside of my head, like, there's nothing to do. There's nothing to do. And I think
No.
that that's where our like society gets things so backwards, is that like there's actually nothing to do. The more that you become yourself, the more that you've listened to your heart, your internal guidance system, you've gotten to know yourself, you've peeled back the layers surrounding the depression that you're experiencing. And like, I can imagine, and I'd be super curious to hear you speak on this if you're open to it, is like,
Yeah.
what those things were that created the depression in the first place. Like being able to peel those things away, it actually just brought you to this state of being, this reconnection with the divine, this reconnection with the universe of like, oh, all I have to do is be me. Be me
Yeah.
and manifest all of the abundance, all of the things that I desire into my life. Like you said, taking your business full time within 6 months, being able to be casted on your favorite reality TV show, like all of these
Yeah.
incredible things. So yeah, if you feel open to that, like what were those things that created depression for you?
It was exactly like you said. It was losing a sense of myself. And that was the biggest sort of like symptom of it, I guess I could say. Like I remember having one distinct memory where I finally ventured out of the house with my husband. And my husband was so supportive and sweet and just there for me in so many different ways. But we were like, let's try going to a restaurant. Like, let's try going out into the world. Maybe this will help. Right. And I remember being at that restaurant and just feeling so dissociated from it, almost like I was watching it from a third person perspective, which is so
Yeah,
interesting because in hypnosis, we do this a lot therapeutically sometimes, but this was not that case. This was a
totally.
totally like dissociation in real life sort of thing. And just not feeling like connected to myself at
Mm,
all. And, it's interesting because, I work with lots of clients. I work with lots of clients with depression and anxiety and all different sorts of mental health states through my hypnosis practice. And I do recognize that there are biological components to anything like depression or anxiety or whatnot. We actually find that it's 50% biological, 50% environment. So
mm,
yes, I might be predisposed to depression, but there's this other 50% that is the environment, that is the
mhm,
thoughts you think, the way that you see yourself,
mhm,
what's going on in your life and the thoughts that you have about what is going on in your life. It's
mhm.
all of these things. That's why I say, you know what? Like, it's not so black and white. I'll have clients that come to me and they're like, "Well, it's my genetics, it's my family, it's this." That might be one component, but what about this other component that you do
Mm.
have control of, that you can begin to finesse and reconnect to? And so in that moment, I think what kind of put me over the edge is I was under a very stressful period of time. I just moved in to what was my dream home. I thought that this was supposed to be like the most happy I would ever be. Like, I'm finally in my dream home. I had just gotten a job. I was working at Instagram at the time. Dream job of mine. Like, shouldn't I be happy? Shouldn't I be happy? And it was that sort of thought. Shouldn't I be happy? Shouldn't I be happy? And it's like we were talking about before, like this, like, I should do this. I should be happy, as opposed to letting happiness be. Let
Yep,
happiness do me rather than me do happiness? And
yep,
that's what it really comes down to with surrender. And I feel like it's just a lesson that I've continued to like blossom and learn more and more and more. But when it comes to surrender and it comes to relaxing, releasing, letting, all those manifestations that are just sort of like, building an intensity behind that door, just waiting for you to open the door and let them in.
yeah.
I think a big thing that could oftentimes get in the way of people doing this, I know it has for me in the past, is thinking, oh, but Brittany, if I let go, that means I don't care. And this is
Mhm,
something I care deeply about. So why would I let go of this thing if I care so much?
mhm,
And for me, it was coming to a recognition that like actually letting go is the greatest thing you could do for something that you care deeply about, because that demonstrates your trust in it, that
mhm.
I can let go of this, I can surrender, and I can let this manifestation come to me in the right time, in the right way, and I can trust in that rather than needing me to be, the person who's what's the word, like doing the marionette strings, right? Like I don't need to be like orchestrating all this, but I trust you, manifestation, enough. I trust you enough that I can surrender and let you go and just live my good life. And I know you'll be there when it's time for you to be there. And
Yep.
what I don't know if that's been your experience, Kat, but isn't it every dang thing, at least I have ever manifested, comes at that moment where you're just like, yep, well, of course. Like, yep, it's going to be there when it's there. And then it's there. It's not the orchestrating that ever brings it there.
Yeah, no, 1000%. I feel like I'm at this place with my manifestations that I like I literally have no attachment to them because I just know they're gonna happen. Like
Yeah.
I feel like there was a period of time, especially the beginning of my business, where I was like so like strangling it essentially because I wanted it to be successful because I had this belief that if I made $100,000, then like all of my problems would go away.
Don't we
Like,
always think that's the case?
oh, 100%. And it was like I hit my first $100,000 within 10 months of starting the business. And I felt even worse than I did when I first started it because I realized that it was like, oh, the money didn't make all of those issues go
Oh,
away.
yeah.
Okay, so I have a question for you based off of what you're
Yeah.
talking about with hypnosis and 50% depression being environmental, 50% depression being genetic. Do you believe that there's a way to genetically heal that part of like your lineage or like of yourself that is predisposed to depression?
Well, I think what's interesting, and Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this a lot
I
in
love
like,
you brought him up because he's who I was thinking about when you said that.
right? Right? Because we know our stress response can trigger and fire off and activate in a way these like aspects of our genetics. So
Yep.
something might be laying, and I don't know if I'm using the right terminology of this. I'm paraphrasing here, but something might be dormant, say in your genes. Let's just use this example of depression. That's how it was for me. It wasn't until I was in my early 30s that I experienced depression, even though I can look back and be like, oh, I was kind of always a moody, emotional kid, you know? But was I depressed? No. Was I a deeply empathetic person that, that was very in tune with my emotions? Yes. That's what made me become an actress to begin with. Like I understand this part of me. It was sort of laying dormant, right? And so to answer your question, I feel like stressors, environment, at least in the case of me, this other 50% that is environment, triggered the 50% in a stress response of the biology and the genetics that
Yep.
made a full-blown case of depression. What is beautiful though, and where hypnosis comes in, as it did for me, as it does for so many of my clients, as I'm sure so many clients you work with, what we can do there is the part in which we can take our magic wand of our focus. As I always think of my focus and my attention is like my magic wand. I'm not going to give it to anybody but myself. And I want to be in charge of it myself, because where I focus on those things that I'm grateful for, those things that are going right, who I truly am, not losing sight of that, because all of that was lost when I was in those throes of depression. Like my magic wand was just who knows where it was. It wasn't in my hand, right? My
Yep.
attention was so diverted that when I was able to harness back my attention and focus on those aspects, not even of the environment, but the environment that I want to create, not the environment I'm currently in. I always like to think of that. Our current environment are just old, crusty manifestations. Our current environment is just the result of our past thinking. So to look at that, if that's great, well, then awesome. That's going to help you create more. But if you don't like what that is, in the case of being stuck in bed, depressed, I'm not going to look at where I currently am. I'm going to look at where I want to go.
Yep.
And that's what I did about taking back the magic wand of my focus, of my attention, using those positive affirmations or those positive thoughts of my hypnosis sessions with my hypnotherapist or the audio recordings as training wheels for the thoughts of where I want to place my focus, getting me to re-divert and get in that habit of re-diverting my attention to where I want to go rather than where I am.
Yep.
All of a sudden sort of turned off the light switch on some of those genetic markers of depression and boosted my threshold to
Yep.
be able to handle more in my environment. So think of it this way. We know that folks who are diagnosed with cancer, 50% of them become depressed, but 50% of them don't. And
Mhm.
think about that. A diagnosis that most of us would tend to agree, a diagnosis of cancer would be a big negative event in our life. 50% of people don't become depressed even with something like that, which
Mhm.
just goes to show that it isn't cancer inherently that causes depression or doesn't. It's your threshold to be able to handle
Yep.
what happens around you. And that's what I found as I practiced hypnosis, of course, became certified in hypnosis, of course, began to help other people with hypnosis, that I realized that it expands our threshold to be able to handle more before the genetic markers, you call them, become triggered. So now I can experience things around me and they don't cause me to go into this full-blown depression. I realize, oh, I know where my focus is. Let's finagle my focus somewhere else or on what I want instead. Or it isn't to say that I've never had a depressed day since then. I think I've maybe had 3 days in the past 5 years where I felt a little low and down. Well, I know I have the tools now. I know how to take my magic wand of my focus and re-divert it where I want to go rather than whatever's got me in a mood, and be able to have a little bit more, I don't want to say control, but a little bit more focus in where I want to go and what I want to create.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I think it's so valuable that there are tools like that. And I love that you brought up Dr. Joe Dispenza. I was thinking about him as you were talking about that, because I mean, if the man can reconstruct his spine with meditation and the power of the
Yes.
mind, then and I don't say this like discarding or discrediting somebody who's experiencing depression right now, because Brittany's been through it. I've been through it as well.
Yeah.
I've been in that same position of almost taking my life because of depression. And it's like, it's not to say that like what you're experiencing isn't valid, because it absolutely is, but really recognizing that through this work, through hypnosis, through meditation, through doing the inner work in some sort of capacity, like you actually have the power to heal yourself from that.
Yeah.
Heal yourself from it 100%. I haven't had a suicidal thought or like a super, super depressed thought in, we're going on 4.5 years. And it's
Right.
like, prior to that, I never thought that like this would be a reality for me. Like I never thought that I would be in the place where I felt free from something like that, because its grasp was so tight on me for such a long time. But it's so many of these things that you're talking about, Brittany. And so for the listeners who are like, okay, the only version of hypnotherapy I've ever seen, or hypnosis I have seen, is the guy up on stage with the little ball that he swings in front of somebody's face, and then suddenly they're doing all of these crazy things. Like, what actually is hypnosis?
Yeah, it's not all quacking like chickens and acting like you're Marilyn Monroe and all those things, right? That we are so used to seeing entertainment wise. I always think of that, hypnosis is like the stage shows are kind of like the candy bar version of hypnosis. They're sugary and for entertainment. Whereas hypnotherapy, what I practice, and hypnosis that helps us in terms of our manifestations, is like the broccoli, like the healthy vegetable, right? That actually tastes good too as we experience it. So all that hypnosis is a deep state of relaxation. And it's funny that, and I think we call it different things. And depending on how relaxed you can become and how deep you go, depends what brainwave state you activate. You might enter alpha, which is more meditative state. You might enter theta, which is more hypnosis trance-like state. You might go really deep and enter delta, which is sleep, and our subconscious mind is listening no matter what. What is curious and interesting to me, especially as I study Dr. Joe Dispenza, since we've been talking about him, he calls it all meditation. It's fine. I'm sure a lot of people are in meditation. I will just say all of his books are required reading for hypnotherapists. Okay.
Mhm.
What he's describing is a state of hypnosis
Yeah.
as well, depending on your depth and your level, right? But that's what it is. It's a depth of relaxation. And what's so beautiful about why, first I was a hypnotherapist and I kind of helped sort of all different, topics and ideas. And I still help a variety of people now. But what I love to apply hypnosis to is to manifestation, because there's so many synergies there, right? So you're in a deep state of relaxation. You're in a deep state of openness. You've released resistance, right? You're in this open, resistance-free state. Your subconscious mind is open to suggestion, meaning if I, as your hypnotherapist, were to offer you a thought and you were to adopt it and say, yeah, I want that as my thought, then your subconscious mind, the part of you that is in charge of all your automatic bodily functions and systems and your emotions and all these things, adopts that thought. It becomes more automatic for you on the subconscious level. And so, isn't it so beautiful how it mirrors this open, resistance free state? Is the state of mind that you are in hypnosis, which is this exact state of mind that's conducive to manifestation. It's the exact sort of state of mind that's needed for that state of surrender, like we were
Yeah.
talking about before. When you were talking, Kat, it's this visual sort of came up to me. It's kind of like, imagine if you had like a life jacket on, but you're like thrashing about in the pool with this life jacket on, and you're making it so much difficult for yourself, right? Like that's like to be in a state of depression or resistance free state, or anything. And if you just stop thrashing about and you just surrendered and you just let go and you just found that state of peace and that state of calm, your life jacket would just float you right up to the top. Or you'd realize, actually, I'm only in 3 feet of water in a pool, like we've all seen those like cartoons, right? That you just realize that, like, oh, this isn't even, I need to stop and relax and release and let go in order to get to where I want to go. And that applies to your manifestations, that applies to depression, depressed anxiety. It applies to really anything you might experience, which is why hypnosis helps so much in that way.
I love that. What do you use hypnosis for now that like you're in this place where you're like, damn, I feel good. I'm living my dreams. I've created my business. I've like I've been on the reality TV show. Like what's that
Yeah.
for you?
I mean, I use it for anything and everything, right? Because what it does is it softens resistant thought, right? So when you're in this state of non-resistance, and say there's something that you want to manifest, so I use it for any major manifestation. I'll give a great example of the last time I majorly applied hypnosis to manifest. It was getting on Big Brother. So I was a fan of, I don't know if you guys are familiar, there's a summer TV show called Big Brother. It's on CBS. It's been on for the past like 25 years. I was a fan of it since I was 10 years old. I was going to be on that show. I have the journal entries of me scripting it out to prove it when I was 15. Like I have videos and photographs to prove it. Like I was a super fan. And I applied to this show 6 times, okay? 6 freaking times before I got on it on my 7th try, okay? So you think any logical human being gets rejected or even worse, doesn't hear back 6 times. They would think, oh, I'm not cut out for this. They must not want somebody like me, right? All these thoughts, these resistant, tension-filled thoughts were going through my head. But I decided my 7th year I was going to do things differently. I wasn't going to be all strategic in how I do my audition video. I wasn't going to force it. I wasn't going to try to get to know casting people to try to get on. No, I'm letting go of all those like particular logistical things. And I was just going to be. And so I
Mm.
told myself, Kat, I was like, I'm going to do this completely differently this time. Whereas past years, I would like for weeks decide what my audition video was going to be like and script it out and this and that. This time I literally sat in this chair that I'm sitting in right now and I just talked to the camera. I said, I'm going to give myself one take and I'm just going to talk and I'm just going to be me. I'm going to surrender. I'm going to let go. I'm going to let this be easy. Why can't I just let this feel like easy to me? Right. And in the meantime, I practice hypnosis. And so my thought was, I'm a house guest on Big Brother 24. That was the season I ended up being cast on. And that was the one I was applying this process to, right? I'm a house guest on Big Brother 24. Now, whenever you have a thought, a sentence that might coincide with what you want to manifest, right? It could be, I'm going to make $1 million in my business this year, or I'm going to have a baby, or I'm going to move into my dream house, whatever that thing is, right? And you claim it as yours. It's an I am suggestion and statement. There might be resistance there to it. And that's kind of like what I experience. I almost think of it sort of like putting on a brand new pair of tennis shoes. Like you got to break in the tennis shoes a little bit. Like they might give you blisters at first. If you don't believe those thoughts, they might give you blisters. And so when I practice this in hypnosis, repeating to myself, I am a house guest on Big Brother 24, it felt like, oh, I'm lying to myself. Like that doesn't feel like real. Like, why would they pick me the 7th time? Like all these doubts were going through my head, right? But the thing was, I practiced that statement in a state of non resistance, in the state of hypnosis. And you notice as you build up those new neural pathways, those new synaptic connections, as you think these new thoughts, they begin to strengthen as you repeat them in the state of hypnosis. And so after a couple weeks, I'm like, well, maybe they might pick me. They've never had a hypnotherapist on the show. That's kind of interesting. Or I'll always kind of have that slightly oddball, quirky character. I could kind of be her. Like, and all of a sudden I started finding evidence for why this could be true, why I might be able to be on the show. Until I continued and continued and continued to practice this until it just became a well of course statement. And that's how I always know. I don't know how you feel, Kat, right before you manifest something, but my secret trick to manifesting anything is when I reach that point where I'm like, well, of course, then I
Mhm.
know it's right around the corner because
Yep.
it's from that state of mind where it's just like, well, yeah, they're going to pick me. I'm not even surprised by it anymore. Well, of course I'm a house guest on BB24. Like they're going to pick me. They have no other option. Like it's just meant to. And you can imagine how I showed up for my auditions and how I showed up for those CBS producers and how I showed up in different areas when I was in that mindset and that attitude, which, and then I manifested it. hypnosis is the process of releasing that resistance. We think about becoming a vibrational or an energetic match, right? When you're in a state of hypnosis, you're in a very high vibe, resistance free state. And so now your manifestation, your thoughts about the manifestation gradually comes to meet that state, which lets it right on through.
I love that. It's so cool. And just evidence of the fact that it's not so much the action that you take, but the energy behind that action. Like you said, it's like you applied 6 other times, you scripted everything out. You're do. What do I need to do to connect
Yeah.
with people, whatnot. As soon as you're just like, okay, I'm going to put in the work behind the scenes, the energetic work to be able to get to the place where it literally is. I like, what did you say? It's like, of course it's like this.
Yeah, well, of course.
Well, of
Like
course.
that's been the main statement that I always notice right before I manifest. I paid off $200,000 worth of student loans right before I made that final payment. It was like just well, of course. Like right before we signed on our dream home. Well, of course. Right before I went full time in my business. Well, of course. Like
Yep.
it's just like this is. And what's funny about it is I think we think it's going to be this big like I won the lottery sort of moment when we manifest something. But
Yeah.
I almost like to think of it, and if anybody works corporate or they used to work corporate, they might understand this. But it's kind of like when I remember back in my corporate marketing days that I would do this job that was like my boss's for like 6 months before I got the promotion. And I'd always be like, what the heck? Like, I should get the promotion. A lot of times we think we need to get the promotion, then we do the job. No, it's the opposite. You do the job, you
Mm.
prove yourself by doing the job, and then you get the promotion. And that's how it kind of is with manifestation. You do the thought work, you believe in it, it's well, of course, and then the manifestation comes. You
Yep.
don't wait until the manifestation comes to think those kind of thoughts. You gotta practice it being like just right around the corner. And so in a way, you kind of celebrate it in advance because by time it comes, I mean, sure, you're gonna be happy and it's great, but like by time I actually found out I was on Big Brother, I already celebrated it so many times before that it was just like, oh, fun. Like
Yep.
it wasn't this big, like, oh my God. Like, no, it wasn't shocking to me.
Yep.
Because I
Yep.
trained myself that it wasn't shocking to me. If it's shocking to you, it's probably there's more work that needs to be done, right?
1000%. That's like, I love that yours is well, of course. Mine is like, duh, like, duh.
Uh,
Of
yeah,
course, duh. Like, why would
yeah,
it not be this? Because it is. It's like when, and for the listeners, I think that if you're in this place where it's like, yeah, but how can I not celebrate? Or how do I start to get myself there? It's really like what both of us are talking about in this place of like, it's not so much about the action. It's not so much about doing, it's about becoming the version of yourself who gets to have that thing. It's like,
yeah,
okay, so really getting yourself into like, let's take for example, you used the example of millionaire earlier, like making $1 million. It's like
yeah,
you're in the place right now where you're making no more than $2,000 a month and you're trying to get to the place of becoming a millionaire and having like that belief of like, well, duh, of course I'm a
yeah,
millionaire. Then it's like, okay, how do you imagine that wealthy version of you shows up? And where are you right now? And how can you start to bridge that gap first internally and then externally?
yeah.
Because no matter, and this is from my experience, it's like no matter how much the external changes, if the internal isn't changing, you're not going to feel safe in that external environment. Like I said, I
No.
made my first $100,000 and I hadn't gotten myself to the place of like the internal safety, the feeling of worthiness and okayness independent of that manifestation. It was like the manifestation was there and I was like, like
Yeah.
fuck no, it sucks. Like none of this even matters to me because I still feel like shit on the inside. And so yeah, really being able to release the do and
Yeah.
step into the be.
And there's two things that as you talk, it reminds me of that. When you say about like, okay, you weren't at that like energetic internal place to be able to handle that, that kind of goes back to what we are talking about before about thresholds and being able to expand your threshold. And I call it threshold, I call it container, right? You need to be able to have that energetic space that you can hold that of which you're calling it.
Yeah.
Because if it's like, oh, I want $1 million, but I can only hold energetically and emotionally and internally X amount of money that's far less than a million, it's not safe to you. Your subconscious mind's going to be like, oh no, like we can't let that in because that is unsafe. My job is to keep her alive, and we to have more $1 million wouldn't do that, right? So how do we begin to stretch and expand and allow and release and and grow these thresholds, grow our containers so that we can do this? I also like the bridge too of the it's not about the action, but the internal work that we do, the thoughts we think, the emotions we feel, who we become internally, I like to say flavors the
Mm,
action. Like, what seasoning do you want on that action? Because you can take an action, let's just say an audition video like I gave. We could do the audition video that I did for 6 years, which was very forceful and was very strategic and was very this and that and conniving, I would even say. Like, I was really trying to left brain the thing, right? Or you can take that same action, creating a 3-minute audition video, and you can season it with trust. You can
yep.
season and flavor it with, well, of course. And just notice how that same action, very same instructions of a 3-minute audition video had a completely different flavor to it and
Flavor.
a completely different outcome.
Mm,
And so I think that's where we begin to see the bridge, because I know a lot of people struggle with this. Probably not folks that follow you or follow I, because they're in the manifestation world. But I know some folks with manifestation struggle with the fact of like, well, what do I do? And how do I know what my action is? It isn't that you don't do any action. It's just that you have to do the internal flavoring and seasoning first to know that the action that you do take is going to be in alignment with what you want. And it's
yep.
not the actual action itself, just looking at it, point blank, that does it. It's the flavoring and the seasoning you're bringing to it of the alignment of being in alignment with your manifestations and your dreams.
I love that. I love any analogy that includes flavor because when people ask me like, or when people tell me like they got a new car or like they got a new shirt or whatever it is, I'm like, what flavor? Like I don't care what kind it is. Like I want to know what flavor it is. Like that it's like
Yeah.
so much more fun. And like you're saying, it's like, yeah, it's not so much the action, looking at the action, it's the flavor behind that action. It's the
Yep.
energy behind that action because it comes down to intention and being able to like move the car, move your life, move the boat, whatever it may be in the
Yep.
direction of that. Um, Speaking of intention, what are you manifesting at the moment?
Oh, Kat, I'm manifesting something so big and so beautiful and so wonderful that I am just so happy right now. I'm ready to grow my family. I'm so ready to grow my family. There's a baby, there's a little spirit babe that is waiting for me and my husband. And talk about surrender. Talk
Mhm.
about not being able to. One of my favorite hypnotherapists, she said, you can't left brain a baby. And that's so
Mhm.
true. You can't left brain really any manifestation, but especially a baby. And, kind of talking about what we were mentioning before of this kind of like a lot of people think that they got to try and they got to effort and they got to do all these things and they got to left brain it because they care so much. And if they surrendered and then they let go, then that somehow means that they don't care. That was a huge lesson for me as I'm manifesting growing my family,
Yep.
because it thought like, for me, I knew what to do. I know what to do. I know to just live my life and be in a state of joy and be in a state of receivership and just and enjoy. I won't even say the meantime, because there is no meantime. It's just life. It's just present moment. Just enjoy the now, and the baby will come when he or she is ready to come. But there was that like already, beginning mama part of me that was like, but if I let go of this, that means I don't care.
Yep.
And that couldn't be further from the truth. The
Yep.
realization that I had with this was just like, actually, the biggest form of my love and my pride and my joy and this little spirit human that is just waiting for its right time and its right place to enter our earth is by letting it do its own thing, by
Yep.
trusting it and its life experience. And so by letting go and allowing it to come and go as it pleases, because it will do that anyways. I don't have any control over another human, even another spirit, right?
Yep.
To let it come and go as it pleases is actually my biggest act of love and
Mhm.
caring. And so I want anybody, even if you're not manifesting a baby or anything, I want anybody to look at that through the lens of what they are manifesting. That what if your biggest act of love and caring is letting it go and surrendering and just letting it be and trusting that whatever is meant to be will truly be, and it will come in its own time. And I think for us manifestors too, it can be hard being like, okay, if it doesn't like immediately manifest, like, are we doing it wrong or like this or that? And it's like, no, there's no timetable for these things either. You could be manifesting it perfectly beautiful and wonderful, and it just might, it's like releasing the layers of the onion. Just like, where is there more for you to discover and release and let go and trust? And so that is definitely the path I am currently on. And I'm so excited to share kind of what I've been learning, even myself after studying this for 16 years. I'm still uncovering new layers of this understanding through, the manifestations, that I'm experiencing right now.
Absolutely. First of all, baby Brittany is going to be adorable.
Oh, I hope so.
And second thing is like, it's so true what you're saying. And I think that especially in America, and I'm sure this is true for other like Western cultures in particular, but it's like we've been so conditioned through this lens of hustle, of like go, do, be, force, make it happen, that like when you look to things like starting a family, making a baby, getting into a relationship, that was one of my biggest things like two and a half years ago, like
Yeah.
right when I moved to New York. I really recognized that like I was in that place because I had made my business work. I had like hustled and gotten my business to like multiple
Yeah.
six figures and all of these things. I had like worked so hard to get here. And then I applied that same sort of energy to dating. And it was like, oh man, did I push away every single man that came into my life? Whereas now
Yeah.
it's really like this exhale, like exhale,
That's
let
what it
go,
is.
release. It's not that I don't care. I actually care probably the most that I've ever cared in my entire life about being in a relationship, but it's not from an energy of desperation. It's from an
No.
energy of knowing that like this is part of my soul's purpose. It's part of the reason that I'm here on planet Earth. I wouldn't have the desire for it if it wasn't meant for me. Just like you were
Yeah.
talking earlier with those flavors, it's like surrendering can have the flavor of I'm doing this because I care so much and because I
Yeah.
trust deeply.
It is not giving up. It is not caring. It is not you doing manifestation wrong. These are all the things that I think why so many of us are like, no, don't make me give up my doing. My
Yep.
doing is all the little, semblance of control that I have. And it's like we can't, think of hypnosis. To try is to fail. A hypnotherapist, whether it's myself or someone else, might ask you to try to open your eyes. And I know if I give you that suggestion in the subconscious mind, in the subconscious, subconscious state, you will be unable to open your eyes because to the subconscious mind, to try, to effort, to try is to fail. And
Mm.
so, how indicative is that? How beautiful is that of our manifestations? To try is to fail. You surrender, you do, you show up, you enjoy. And I keep on wanting to say the meantime, but it's not the meantime because it's just the present moment. You enjoy life as it is. This life right now, where there isn't a physical baby, I'm very much spiritually connected to my children, by the way, but there isn't
Yeah.
a physical crying, snotty baby in my hands, right? Like that doesn't yet exist, which I can't wait to get all the snot. Like I can't wait until that does. But just because that doesn't exist doesn't mean that it's surrendering to that state and that experience, right? And to try is to fail. So we surrender or we do the inspired actions or we just be,
Yep.
to be is to be successful.
Mm.
And to just be in joy. I think that's what I've been focusing on the most now too. That it's like this moment in time that some might call the waiting. It's not waiting at all. These are very valuable, beautiful years of my life. And I'm going to go on all the fun vacations with my husband and I'm going to do all the fun things and I'm going to build my business and I'm going to work with my clients. I'm going to do all the fun things. And then when baby decides to join this party and have fun with us, like that will be the time too.
Win. Yeah.
Same with the
Absolutely.
partner, same with the boyfriends. Like he will be there, when it's time. And
Absolutely.
especially with these manifestations that involve other people. Well, actually, I'm really
100%.
interested. Can I ask you a question real quick, Kat?
Absolutely.
I am
Please.
interested. Like, let's talk. How do you feel about the I see this on TikTok a lot. I see this and I know I have my own thoughts about it, but like manifesting an SP,
I
manifesting a
literally knew you
specific
were about to
person.
say
Yeah.
that.
Tell me your thoughts before I tell you mine.
I
And there's
think
no
it's a
right or
bunch of
wrong. I think it's just perspectives, right?
I think it's a bunch of trash.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I hate it. I think it literally disregards every single thing that we talk about in the world of manifestation, which is the fact that you're supposed to stay open to something that is meant for you and greater than you could have ever imagined. Majority of the time when I see people manifesting their specific person, specifically on TikTok, it's huge on TikTok. It's like
Yeah.
manifest their exes back. They're trying to manifest somebody who didn't serve or support them in the first place because they have something
No.
unhealed inside of themselves that they're like, oh, keep re-triggering this, keep on tearing this wound deeper and deeper and deeper,
Yeah.
continuing to reaffirm this like bullshit in their lives, as opposed to literally like stepping into this place of like, you cannot miss what is meant for you. Like you can't miss what's
Mhm.
meant for you. So if it is that person, you don't need to be manifesting them. They're already
No.
going to make their way into your life. And instead, putting your focus and attention into one, yourself, and two, being able to open up to possibility, open up to what is for your highest good, then that actually brings you somebody that's far greater than whoever that SP is. And for anybody who's listening to this that just got triggered by that, sorry, not sorry. I genuinely like, I've had people ask me, like, Kat, will you make videos about like manifesting your SP? And I'm like, no, I think
Mhm.
it's a fucking bullshit. I absolutely will not.
Well, thank you for doing the good work because I get that same request and I have the same exact answer. I'm like, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put that out there. Amen to everything you said. Also, it comes back to this, whether it be a baby or a boyfriend. We are in charge. We have our own magic wands, but we don't get to go grab the magic wand of the baby or grab the magic wand of the boyfriend and say, you're going to connect and be in my life. No, we have our attention and our focus. And what's funny is I think back to my like manifesting my husband and like I knew he was going to be my husband from like literally the moment I knew him. I called him husband to my friends. Like thank God it worked out because it was like a little freaky, maybe even a little like, borderline stalkerish. Thank God he liked me too because I was so set on him. But here's the
Yep.
thing, I wasn't set on him and I was into manifestation at the time. I had my vision board and everything. I was My mantra with him was thank you, universe. Thank you, God, for showing me an example of what a man could be. I know
Yep.
there's a guy like him out there. So it's either him or
Or
it's
something
someone
great.
else, but I know it has shown me that there's no reason to settle, that the kind of person I'm looking to spend my life with does exist. And therefore, I'm holding that vision. And so it wasn't of him, sorry, babe, but it like wasn't of him, but it was of his qualities. And of
Yep.
course, he ended up being the perfect energetic map to those qualities. And it all ended up working out perfectly. We've been together 14 years. But like, it's beautiful to recognize that it's like it's not about the SP. It's not about the specific person. It's about who you are and what qualities you're looking to share and what you're an energetic match to. And like you said, if you're trying to get back with somebody that like was that mismatch, I think that maybe if I had to guess why these things are so darn popular on TikTok is it appeals to this maybe subset of audience. And I get it, we've all been there, but the subset of manifester who's like not wanting to surrender and wants that control, you know? So I get to pick the SP and I get to manifest that. And it's just like, I know that's the hardest layer. That's what we've been talking about the most in this conversation is that surrendering aspect. And that even means surrendering to who the person is, who the baby is, who the boyfriend is, who the whatever is,
Yep.
but holding the frequency and the vibration of the qualities, the experience, who you are in the presence of that person.
Literally 100%. It is. It's so interesting. I feel like what you said, the control aspect is so real, so alive. And what just came back to me as you said that is what you said earlier in the conversation of like, you can't left brain it. And if you're trying to,
Oh,
that's manipulation.
it
And it's like,
is.
do you really want to be manipulating your way into your dream life? Or like, do you want it to flow? Do you want it
Yeah.
to kind of just be presented to you because that's your option? Like you
Yeah.
can have manipulation and force and trying to make it happen. Or earlier when you were talking about like grasping on so tightly to something, your hands were literally like
Yeah.
squeezed shut. And for the listeners who can't see us, we both have our like fists closed, holding on to something. Like you can't catch your blessings when your fists are grasped onto something else. You have to open up your palms, open them up so that you can actually catch the abundance and catch the blessings that the universe is trying to give to you. It's like,
Yeah.
we can
And
literally just see it as that.
Yeah, and what's so beautiful is that mirrors the state of, right, that tension filled, clenched fists is the exact opposite of the state of hypnosis. Hypnosis is relaxing, releasing of tension, right? And so when we're in that state of hypnosis, we're connected into our subconscious mind. Our subconscious mind is the gateway to the energy of all that is, the quantum field. Of
Yep.
course, you're going to need to be in your most relaxed, resistance-free state to let those things on in. The trying, the grasping, the clenching is the exact opposite energy of that. And so
Yep.
therefore that would hold, I always try to think, I think sometimes when I work with clients, this is easier if you see me, but like imagine if you just like put all the tension into your arm, like, and you made your arm really stiff. And then try to like wave, like it's very like staccato. Like if you guys were watching me, I look like a lunatic right now, like trying to like wave my arm with all this tension, right? But if you relax those muscles and let them be loose and your wrist is just kind of loose, you can move so much faster with
Yep.
loose muscles. You can move back and forth so much quicker when you release that tension. And
Yep.
that's what our manifestations are just like, please, Brittany, please, Kat, please, everyone who's listening, just like release the tension. Like, let me come on through because
Yep.
the tension is quite literally blocking it.
Literally. Oh, so damn good. And so I could chat with you all day long,
I
but
know, but
I'm
we will get another chance because Kat's going to be on
absolutely,
my show too.
yeah, I cannot wait. But one question I love to ask everybody who comes on to the No Bullshit Manifestation Show is, what is one piece of no bullshit advice you can give to the listeners?
Oh man, I'm trying to think of something like amazing and beautiful we haven't already discussed, but I will tell you the first thing that comes to my mind, okay? It's just freaking surrender.
Mm,
It's just surrender. And it feels like such the opposite. You're like, "What?" Like we've been talking about something you care about so much, something that's so important, something that why would I surrender? It's easy to surrender for the little things. That's why it's easy to manifest a parking spot in the front row, right? Like the little things are so easy to surrender on. When we quote unquote think something is big, that's when it makes it harder, but it's even more important in those instances. And that's what's so funny about for me, manifesting a soulmate might be super easy. Somebody else maybe have more resistance on that. Like what we think is big like varies from person to person, which is why some things are easier to manifest than others. But regardless of what the topic is, the element of surrender is the thing that really is the gateway most of all. And when you think of surrender and when you think of hypnosis as the state of surrender, then all of a sudden you can start to like, at least in my mind, you can start to see the pieces of like, oh, okay, here's how I access this state and access that feeling state of surrender so I can allow these things in. So yeah, the
mm.
no bullshit advice is just surrender. I know it's scary. Kat will hold your hand. I will hold your hand. It is okay, but just surrender because the sooner that you do, the more you're able to increase that threshold and capability and container to be able to allow those things in, and the more you're on your way and you're living the kind of life that you designed.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
Absolutely. I love that so much. And I'm so glad that we were able to dive so deep into surrender on this podcast episode. So
Yes.
anybody who's listening that wants to connect with you, what's the best places they can do that?
Yeah, well, you can go to my website. It's brittanyhoopes.com. I'm also on Instagram at brit.hoops. You can find me online. Just Google. If you Google my name, you might get a lot of Big Brother stuff. But finally, post show, my manifestation stuff is at the top of my search engine list.
Amazing.
So we finally have made it there. So I'm happy to report.
Cool. Yay. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show, Brittany. And everybody who wants to go connect with her, go check out the show notes down below so that you can do so.
Hey, real quick before you go, I have something for you. If you are loving the No Bullshit Manifestation Show and you're always wanting to expand and calibrate your nervous system for greater levels of wealth, then I've created the perfect nervous system expansion meditation for you. This meditation will take you through the process that I use to start to call in greater levels of wealth into my life and calibrate your nervous system for more money moving forward. All you have to do to claim this meditation is leave a review for the No Bullshit Manifestation Show on Apple Podcasts and or Spotify. Take a screenshot of your review and send it to me via email, which is hello@katkozad.com. Once I get your email with the screenshot of the review, I will send you the link to claim your nervous system expansion meditation for money manifestation. You can also find these instructions down below in the show notes. But with that, that's all that I have for you, and I am sending you my love. I'll chat with you on the next podcast.